folks, Chris here from Brickhouse Paddles. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about paddle care and maintenance and give you some tips on how to keep your paddle looking better and playing better for longer. First tip, and this one's pretty easy, is when you're finished playing, wipe your grip off. Use your shirt or a towel maybe you've got in your bag. Keep your grip clean and it will keep the bacteria down and your grip will last longer. It'll also make it easier to replace when you get around to replacing the grip. So this one follows the cleaning your grip. Periodically clean your paddle face. Your paddle will pick up a lot of debris and dirt from, especially if you're playing outside, from the ball contacting the ground. Picks up a little bit of dirt, transfers it to the paddle. If you don't keep that paddle face relatively clean, it's going to deteriorate much quicker. Not only will it stain, but that grit will also have an impact on the paddle finish. So just take a little cloth, maybe a little water, very little water, and give your paddle face a wipe periodically. Maybe use a little bit of soap. Do not use harsh chemicals. Do not use acetone. Do not use alcohol. Do not use Varsol, any harsh chemical like that. It can adversely affect the graphics, not just in our paddle, any paddle. And whatever you do, don't submerge your paddle in water. That will have an effect on the glue bond around the paddle that holds the trim on, and it can actually have an impact on the core material. So there you go. Clean the paddle face, don't submerge it, mild soap and water, no harsh chemicals. So the next one is, don't leave your paddle sitting out in direct sunlight. If you're playing outside, that's fine, it's unavoidable. But if you're storing your paddle, make sure you're not storing it or leaving it in direct sunlight. This could be the backseat of a car, it could be the front dash, could be in front of an open window that's facing south or a big window facing south. The sun's UV rays are really damaging to finishes and colors, not just on our paddles, but anybody's paddles. It can lead to fading of the playing surface, can fade the graphics, can discolor it. So if you can avoid it, don't leave your paddle in direct sunlight if you're not using it. Keep your paddle out of and away from hot places. And when I say hot places, I'm talking about areas and surfaces that can exceed, say, 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything above 150 degrees Fahrenheit will have an adverse effect on the epoxy resins and even the core of your paddle and the glue bond on the trim. It can lead to premature failure of your paddle. So if you're in Phoenix, for example, in the summer in August, don't leave your paddle sitting in the car. If your car is parked out in direct sunlight, inside that vehicle maybe 120, 130 degrees can damage your paddle. Again, if you're up north and you're heating with radiators, don't leave your paddle sitting on top of a rad. So this next tip is for people that live in colder climates. Don't leave your paddle sitting in a car or exposed to colder temperatures and then expect to go out and play it right away. Quite often what will happen is if it's really cold, say below freezing, the plastics and materials that make up a lot of the components of your paddle, like the trim, the core, maybe the paddle face, or maybe even some of the handle blanks, they weaken. It becomes more brittle the colder the temperature. So if you're going to go out and play and your paddle's been sitting in the car for a while, warm the paddle up before you start to play it. If you're playing outside, don't take a paddle that's really expensive or that you really enjoy playing with. Take a beater paddle, and if it breaks, it breaks. Keep your grip in good shape. Don't let it get too worn or deteriorated. You can always use an overgrip if you don't want to replace your original grip, but keeping that in good shape will keep your paddle in your hand and from coming across a court unintentionally. And you never know where that's going to land. Anyway, keep your grip in good shape. It's also healthier for you. And there you go. Replace it, overwrap it, but keep it in good shape. Let's say you're playing and your trim comes loose, or you notice your trim starting to come a little bit loose. Take a little bit of cyanoacrylic glue or an instant glue, get it under the lip of that trim, re-glue the trim before it gets too bad. Don't let it get to the point where you have to replace the whole trim. It's possible, but it's not always an easy job. So it never hurts to put a piece of tape around the end of your paddle, whether you've got an edgeless or a trim paddle. It'll just keep your paddle from scuffing. Sometimes you hit a ground shot. Some people like to pick the ball up off the court with their paddle. A little bit of tape to protect that edge trim and keep you from, or hopefully keep you from replacing it sooner rather than later. All right, the next one. Don't hit anything heavier than a pickleball with your paddle. We see it all the time. Somebody comes in, we have tennis courts next to us, somebody lobs a ball over, it comes over into the court, somebody picks up Tennis ball, throws it up in the air and tries to smack it back with a paddle. Your paddle's not designed to hit a tennis ball, for example, and I've seen more than one or two paddles, not ours, but more than one or two paddles break at the handle after somebody's smacked a tennis ball. So don't hit anything heavier than a pickleball. I know a lot of people like to add a little weight to their paddle, but the key word there is little. Don't overweight your paddle. Paddles aren't usually designed to carry excessive weight. They're designed for the weight they are. So if you really want a heavier paddle, buy a heavier paddle. Don't take a 7.4 ounce paddle and try to make it an 8.4 ounce paddle. That's a little excessive. I've seen a lot of paddles where they've added weight, a significant amount of weight, and what happens is you end up with a handle failure. You can't blame the manufacturer for that. That is well beyond where those paddles are tested. So don't overweight your paddle. If you want to add 0.2 of an ounce or 0.3 of an ounce, you're probably okay. But anything more than that, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it. The next one is be careful when you're tapping paddles. I know it's a tradition, and when you're finished playing, people like to come up and tap paddles. And if you win a point, you want to tap your partner's paddle. It's all great, but I'm sure it was invented by a manufacturer somewhere that needed to sell you another paddle. I strongly recommend that when you're tapping, tap the handle, not the face of the paddle or the edge of the paddle. What happens when you tap that paddle, or somebody gets a little overzealous, they tap your paddle like that. Next thing you know, you've damaged the core on the inside, or if they're tapping, they're coming up and hitting your paddle like in the face like that. It's not always going to be flat and hit the trim. It's going to hit the paddle face like that. It can lead to damage in the core and early failure of your paddle, which is not covered under warranty, by the way. So be kind to your paddle. You pay a lot of money for it, and you want it to last as long as possible and play its best. Tap the handle first. So there you go. So a few thoughts on how to keep your paddle looking and playing better longer. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you, I hope, on the court soon with a Brickhouse paddle. Take care.